The music stopped. My heart did too. And in that moment, I realized that my life, the one I thought I knew, was over forever. Hey girls, I'm Jessica, and today I'm going to tell you the most devastating, most shocking, and most painful story of my life. A story that completely changed me, that still gives me chills 3 years later when I think about it. Get ready, because what I'm about to tell you isn't one of those romantic stories with a happy ending. It's not even one of those typical cheating stories you might have heard before. This is the story of how I discovered that the man I had loved for 6 years, who I had just married hours earlier, had been lying to me about his deepest identity. And I discovered everything during our first wedding dance. But before I get to that terrible moment, to that discovery that destroyed and then rebuilt me, I need to tell you everything from the beginning. Because to truly understand what happened that evening of June 15, 2021, you need to know our story. You need to understand who David and I were, how much we loved each other, or how much I thought we loved each other, and how I could have been so blind to all the signs that now, in hindsight, seem as obvious as billboards. So get comfortable, grab something to drink, because this story is long and intense. And I'm warning you right now, there will be moments when you'll want to turn off the video in anger, others when you'll cry with me, and still others when you'll wonder how such things can happen in real life. But please, stay with me until the end. Because this story, however painful, has an important message that every woman should hear. Who we were, the birth of an apparent love. My story with David begins 6 years before that cursed wedding, when we were both 22 years old. We were in college, I was studying psychology, he was studying engineering. We met during a frat party, one of those chaotic college nights where everyone drinks too much and has fun like there's no tomorrow. I remember perfectly the moment I first saw him. He was leaning against the bar counter with a beer in his hand, laughing at something his friend had said. He had these incredible blue eyes, brown hair that was always a little messy, and that crooked smile that made your heart melt. He was tall, athletic. He played intramural soccer with his coursemates, and had this natural confidence that made him magnetic. But you know what struck me most? The way he looked at me when our eyes met. It wasn't the usual college pickup look. It was intense, almost surprised, as if he too had felt that spark I had felt. He approached, offered me a drink, and we started talking. And girls, we talked all night. I don't even know how it happened, but at 7 in the morning we were still there, sitting on the university steps, telling each other our life stories as if we'd known each other forever. David was born in Chicago, like me. Middle-class family, father an engineer, mother a teacher. He had an older brother already married and a dog he adored. He dreamed of opening his own design firm, maybe specializing in sustainable architecture. He was passionate about movies, read a lot, rare among the guys I knew, and had this passion for travel that had immediately won me over. Someday, he had told me that first night, I want to visit all the continents. And I hope to do it with someone special. The way he had said it, looking straight into my eyes, had made my heart beat so hard I was sure he could hear it. From that night, we never left each other's side. David was the perfect boyfriend, the one all my friends envied me for. He was attentive, romantic, present. He brought me flowers for no reason, wrote me sweet messages during the day, remembered all our anniversaries, even the silly ones like 6 months since our first kiss or 1 year since you first said I love you. With my family, he was perfect. My father, who was usually very protective and suspicious of my boyfriends, had accepted him immediately. He's a good guy, he always said. You can see he loves you. My mother literally adored him. She always cooked his favorite dishes when he came to dinner at our house, and he always helped her clear the table and wash the dishes. He had practically become a son to them. And me? I was madly in love. I thought I had found the man of my life. The one to grow old with, to build a family with, to realize all the dreams we had shared during those long nighttime conversations. David made me feel special, protected, loved. When I was with him, the world made sense. During college we lived through all the typical moments of a young couple in love. The first vacations together, a weekend in Napa Valley that I still remember as one of the most beautiful of my life. The nights spent studying together in the university library, him with his engineering projects, me with my psychology books. Dinners with friends, parties, movies, walks along Lake Michigan. Everything seemed perfect. Too perfect, maybe. The college years and the best friend. During these years I also got to know Tyler, David's best friend since childhood. Tyler was the complete opposite of David, shorter, more extroverted, always the center of attention. He had this magnetic personality that attracted everyone, but with me he had always been a bit cold, distant. Not rude, mind you, but never really warm. At first I thought it was normal. You know how some male friends are, a bit jealous when their best friend finds a serious girlfriend. But over time I started noticing strange things about their relationship. First, they saw each other a lot. More than was normal, even for two best friends. David went out with Tyler at least 3 times a week. Soccer on Tuesday, drinks on Thursday, night out on Saturday. At first I didn't pay attention to it. In fact, I was happy that David had such a solid friendship. But when I started complaining that we spent little time together, David would stiffen. Tyler has been my best friend since we were 8 years old, he would tell me. I can't abandon him for a girl. A girl. Not my girlfriend, not the woman I love. A girl. Second, the way they looked at each other. They had this very intense nonverbal language, made of knowing looks, complicit smiles, jokes that only they understood. Initially I thought it was normal. I also have this kind of complicity with my best friends. But there was something different about their looks. Something I couldn't decipher, but that made me uncomfortable. Third, Tyler had never had a serious relationship. In 6 years, I had never seen him with a girl for more than a few weeks. He's made that way, David would explain to me. He's a free spirit, he doesn't want to commit. But Tyler was 28 years old, the same age as David. He wasn't a kid anymore. And then there were the phone calls. David and Tyler talked every day, often multiple times a day. And when David's phone rang and he saw it was Tyler, his face would light up in a particular way. A way that, I must admit, bothered me. Because it was the same way his face lit up when he saw me, but maybe even more so. Once, during our 4th year of college, I made a joke about this thing. Are you two getting married? I said laughing, after David had interrupted our dinner to answer a call from Tyler that lasted 20 minutes. David didn't laugh. He became serious, almost annoyed. Don't say stupid things, Jessica. Tyler is my best friend, that's all. But the way he had said it, the tension in his voice, had given me my first doubts. Doubts that I immediately suppressed, though, because David was my boyfriend, he loved me, we were building a life together. And above all, because the idea that there could be something else between him and Tyler was so absurd, so far from my reality, that I couldn't even seriously consider it. If only I had known how wrong I was. Graduation and first life projects together. We graduated a few months apart from each other. I graduated in July with summa cum laude in psychology. My thesis was on identity disorders, irony of fate, and David in October with honors in engineering. They were intense months, full of studying and stress, but also of projects for the future. When we've both graduated, David would tell me, we'll really start our life together. We had already talked about marriage, naturally. Not in a concrete way, but as something that would happen sooner or later. In a few years, David always said. When we have a stable economic situation. After graduation, David immediately found a job at an important engineering firm in Chicago. I started an internship at a clinical psychology center. We got an apartment together, a nice 2-bedroom in Lincoln Park, nothing luxurious, but it was ours, and we were thrilled. Living together was beautiful, at least at first. David was a perfect roommate, organized, clean, always willing to cook when I came home tired from work. In the evening we would curl up on the couch to watch Netflix, or talk about our days. On weekends we explored Chicago like we were tourists, discovering new places, trying different restaurants. We made love regularly, and David seemed always involved and present. He wasn't particularly passionate or imaginative, but he was sweet, attentive to my needs. I thought it was simply his character. Not all men are Latin lovers, right? But here too, in hindsight, there were signs I should have noticed. David was never the one who took the initiative in intimacy. I was always the one to make the first move, and he would follow, but without that urgency, that passion you'd expect from a young man in love. Sometimes, during our most intimate moments, he seemed distant. Physically present, but mentally elsewhere. Once I asked him if something was wrong, if maybe I wasn't satisfying him enough. "No, honey," he had replied. "It's just that I'm not very expressive about these things. But I love you, never doubt that." And I believed him. Because I wanted to believe him. Meanwhile, Tyler was increasingly present in our lives. He came to dinner at our place at least once a week, often spent weekends with us, even had keys to our apartment for emergencies. I tried to be welcoming, to consider him part of the family, but there was always this subtle tension that I couldn't explain. Tyler treated me with courtesy, but never with warmth. It was as if I were an obstacle between him and David, something to tolerate but not truly accept. And David, when Tyler was around, became different. More lively, more present, more happy? It was as if Tyler could bring out a part of him that I couldn't reach. But again, I ignored these signs. Because the alternative was too scary to consider. The marriage proposal, the most beautiful moment, I thought. After 2 years of living together, David started talking more seriously about marriage. "I think it's time," he had told me one evening, while we were having dinner on our balcony. "We have a stable situation, we love each other, we've built something beautiful together. Why wait any longer?" My heart had jumped with joy. Finally, after 6 years together, David was ready to take the big step. We had started talking about when, where, how. I dreamed of a wedding in Napa Valley. He preferred something more traditional in Chicago. In the end we had found a compromise. Blackstone Hotel, a dream location in downtown Chicago, elegant enough for a traditional ceremony but with that romantic atmosphere I had always wanted. And then came the real proposal. David had organized everything down to the smallest detail. A trip to California, to Big Sur, for our 7th anniversary. "Just you and me," he had said. "A romantic week to celebrate everything we've built together." Tyler, obviously, wasn't happy about this vacation. "Couldn't you all go together?" he had said when David announced it to him. The tone was joking, but I had perceived a hint of genuine disappointment. As if the idea of spending a week without David really bothered him. "Tyler, it's our anniversary," David had replied, but he too seemed a bit uncomfortable with his friend's reaction. Anyway, we left. Big Sur was magical. 5 days of sun, ocean, romantic dinners, breathtaking sunsets. David was more present than usual, less distracted by his phone, more focused on us. It was as if, away from Chicago and Tyler, he could finally be completely mine. The proposal came on the 4th day, during the most beautiful sunset I had ever seen. We were on the terrace of our hotel, overlooking the Pacific, the sun diving into the ocean painting the sky 1,000 colors. David had seemed nervous all afternoon. He kept touching his jacket pocket and looking at me with a strange expression. And then, suddenly, he got down on one knee. "Jessica," he began, and his voice was trembling slightly. "You are the most important woman in my life. In these 6 years, you have made me the happiest man in the world. You have taught me what it means to truly love. You have supported me in all my dreams. You have given me a stability I didn't think I could find." He pulled out a little blue velvet box. Inside was the most beautiful ring I had ever seen, a solitaire with a perfect diamond, exactly as I had always dreamed. "Will you marry me? Will you build the rest of our life together?" I said yes before he even finished the sentence. I was in tears, he was in tears. We hugged and kissed while the sun finished setting behind us. It was the most beautiful moment of my life, or at least I thought so then. That night we made love with a passion we had never had before. David seemed truly involved, present, in love. It was as if the proposal had freed something in him, a part of himself he kept hidden. If only I had known that passion wasn't for me, but for the idea of what I represented for him: normalcy, social acceptance, the perfect cover. Wedding preparations. Between joy and first suspicions. The return from California was a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. We had to organize everything in 10 months. We had chosen June of the following year as our wedding date. The Blackstone Hotel was available on June 15, 2021, a date that seemed perfect to me: late spring, high probability of good weather, and above all symbolic because it was exactly 6 months after our 7th anniversary. The first months of preparations were beautiful. We went together to choose everything: the menu, the flowers, the music, the invitations. David seemed as involved and enthusiastic as I was. We had even taken dance lessons for the first dance. We had chosen Perfect by Ed Sheeran, a song that had special meaning for us because we had listened to it during our first vacation together. But then, gradually, things started to change. At first they were small things, almost imperceptible. David had started being on the phone more often, and when I asked him who it was he always answered work or Tyler. His phone, which he used to always leave around without problems, was suddenly always with him and protected by a password. "It's for security," he explained when I pointed it out. At work they told us to protect all devices with secure passwords. Possible, but why had he never told me this password? In 6 years together, we had never had secrets about phones. In fact, we often used each other's phones without problems. Then there was the bachelor party issue. David talked about it with an enthusiasm I had never seen before. "The guys want to organize something special," he would tell me. "Maybe a weekend away, maybe Vegas or Miami." Vegas? Doesn't that seem excessive for a bachelor party? "Come on, Jessica, it's the last time I can go crazy with my friends. Then I'll be a married man, I'll have to be more responsible." The way he had said it bothered me. As if marrying me was a prison, a burden he could never free himself from. "And who will be at this bachelor party?" "The usual guys: Tyler, Jake, Matt, maybe my cousin Ryan too." Tyler, obviously. Tyler was always at the center of everything that concerned David. He was the one organizing the bachelor party, he was the one who had proposed Vegas, He was the one who seemed more enthusiastic than the groom himself. And then I started noticing the looks. During rehearsals at the church, during dinners with friends to organize the wedding, during meetings with vendors. David and Tyler exchanged these looks. Complicit? Intense? I wouldn't know how to define them, but there was something that made me uncomfortable. It was as if they were having a private conversation with their eyes, a conversation from which I was excluded. One evening, about a month before the wedding, I tried to talk to David about it. Is everything okay between you and Tyler? Of course, why? I don't know, I see you two acting a bit strange lately. Like you have some secret. David suddenly became tense. What secret should we have? Tyler is my best man. We're organizing some surprises for the wedding together. It's normal that we have something to hide from you. Surprises for the wedding. It seemed plausible. What kind of surprises? Jessica, if I told you it wouldn't be surprises anymore, would it? He was right, obviously. But there was something in his tone, in his posture, that told me it wasn't the whole truth. That same evening, while David was in the shower, his phone received a message. It was on the nightstand, the screen lit up, and I saw the name, Tyler. And underneath, the message preview, I can't wait to. The rest was cut off, I couldn't read the continuation. But that phrase stuck in my head. I can't wait to. What? The wedding? The bachelor party? Something else? I tried not to think about it, but that doubt started growing inside me like a poisonous seed. The bachelor party, the weekend that changed everything. The bachelor party took place 3 weeks before the wedding. David and his friends left Thursday night for Vegas and returned Sunday night. 4 days that, in retrospect, were the moment when everything changed definitively. Before leaving, David was nervous in a way I had never seen. Not the normal nervousness of someone about to get married, but something different. He was agitated, distracted, kept checking his suitcase as if he had forgotten something important. Everything okay, honey? I had asked him while I was taking him to the airport. Yes, it's just that. You know, it's strange to think that this is really the last time I do something like this as a bachelor. The way he had said it struck me. There was a melancholy in his voice, as if he was about to lose something precious instead of gaining a wife. David, if you're not sure about the marriage, we can talk about it. It's not too late to. No. He had replied too quickly, too loudly. No, Jessica, I want to marry you. It's normal to be a bit nostalgic, right? Nostalgic about what, though? During the weekend, David sent me very few messages. A few group photos on the beach, a couple of generic messages like, all good, we're having fun. Nothing personal, nothing romantic. It was as if, once he arrived in Vegas, he had forgotten he had a fiancée waiting for him at home. Sunday night, I went to pick him up at the airport. When I saw him come out of the gate, I immediately noticed that something had changed. He was tanned, relaxed, but there was something different in his look. A kind of awareness? Determination? I wouldn't know how to define it. How did it go? I asked him while we were driving home. Great. We had a lot of fun. Tell me everything. But David was evasive. He told me about the beaches, the clubs, how much they had drunk, but superficially, without details, without that liveliness with which he usually told me about his experiences. And Tyler? How was he? Good, very good. He was in great shape. The way he had said great shape had made me suspicious. There was something particular about those words, an emphasis I couldn't decipher. That night in bed, David was different. More distant, less affectionate than usual. When I tried to get close to make love, he told me he was tired from the trip. But he didn't seem tired. He seemed elsewhere. In the following days, David became increasingly distant. He was physically present, but mentally he seemed to be somewhere else. He spent hours on the phone with Tyler. "We're settling the last details for the wedding," he explained to me, and when he wasn't on the phone with him, he seemed to be thinking about him. One evening, a week before the wedding, I found David sitting on the balcony with his gaze lost in the void. "What are you thinking about?" I asked him. "Nothing in particular." "David, since you came back from Vegas, you've been strange. Did something happen?" He hesitated. For a moment I saw in his eyes something that seemed like a desire to confess, to tell me the truth. But then he closed up. "No, Jessica. It's just the stress of the wedding. You know how I am, I always get agitated before important events." But I knew it wasn't just that. There was something else, something I couldn't identify, but that was slowly destroying me from the inside. The last days, increasingly evident signs. The week before the wedding was hell disguised as joy. From the outside, we looked like the perfect couple preparing for the most beautiful day of their lives. Inside, I was going crazy with anxiety and suspicion, while David seemed increasingly detached and absent. The signs had become impossible to ignore. The phone. David never separated from his phone. He took it even to the bathroom, always kept it face down when we were together, and every time he received a message he had this instinctive reaction to hide the screen. Once, while we were having dinner, I saw Tyler's name appear on the screen and David practically threw the phone in his bag. Intimacy. It had completely disappeared. David always found an excuse. He was tired, had a headache, had to get up early the next day. In a week, we hadn't even kissed passionately. It was as if physical contact with me made him uncomfortable. Tyler, the best man, had become even more present in our lives. He came to our house almost every day with the excuse of organizing the last wedding details. But I saw them talking in whispers, stopping when I entered the room, exchanging those damn looks that drove me crazy. David's mood. He had become moody in a way I had never seen before. One moment he seemed happy and excited about the wedding, the next he was silent and melancholy. It was as if he was in conflict with himself, as if part of him wanted to marry me and another part didn't. 2 days before the wedding, I had the courage to confront him directly. "David, we need to talk." "About what?" "About us. About what's happening. You've changed since you came back from Vegas, and I'm going crazy." David went pale. "Jessica, we're 2 days away from our wedding. This isn't the time to." "It's exactly the time. If there's something wrong, we need to talk about it now, before it's too late." He lowered his gaze. For a moment I thought he would tell me everything. That he would confess whatever had happened in Vegas, whatever was tormenting him. Instead he raised his eyes, took my hand and said, "Jessica, I love you. I want to marry you. It's just stress, I swear. After the wedding everything will go back to normal. I love you." The last sincere words he said to me. The day before the wedding, David went out with Tyler for the last bachelor night. They came back very late, and when David came home he smelled of alcohol and had red eyes. I don't know if it was from the alcohol or from tears. "How did it go?" I asked him. "Good. Tyler gave me a nice speech about what marriage means, about how lucky I am to have you." The way he had said it sounded false, like he was reciting a script. That night David couldn't sleep. I heard him get up several times, go to the bathroom, walk around the house. At 5 in the morning he was already awake, sitting in the kitchen with a coffee in his hands. Nervous? I asked him. A little. David, if you have doubts, if you're not sure. Jessica, enough, he exploded. Stop asking me these questions. I told you I want to marry you, what more do you want? It was the first time in 6 years that he had raised his voice at me. And in that moment I understood that something had broken definitively between us. But it was too late to go back. The invitations had been sent, the hotel booked, everything organized. And above all, I still hoped I was wrong. The wedding day, the calm before the storm. On June 15, 2021, I woke up at 6 in the morning. It was a beautiful sunny day, the sky was blue without a cloud, the air smelled of spring. From a meteorological point of view, it was the perfect day for a wedding. I had slept at my parents' house the night before. Tradition dictates that the bride and groom shouldn't see each other on the wedding day before the ceremony, and when I opened my eyes I immediately felt the adrenaline flowing through my veins. It's my day, I thought. The most important day of my life. My mother was already awake, obviously. I heard her bustling in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, setting everything up for the arrival of the makeup artist and hairdresser. She was more nervous than me, constantly checking that everything was perfect. How do you feel, honey? She asked me when I came down to the kitchen. Excited. Happy. A little nervous, but that's normal, right? Normal. If only I had known how far from normal that day would be. The morning flew by quickly. Perfect makeup and hair, the bridesmaids arriving one after another, the flowers being delivered, the last phone calls to verify that everything was in place at the hotel. Around 11, it was time to put on the dress. It was beautiful, a princess dress in lace and tulle, with a long train and a 3-meter veil. When I put it on and looked at myself in the mirror, I started crying. You're beautiful, said my mother, and she too had tears in her eyes. In that moment I really felt like a princess. All the doubts, all the worries of the last weeks disappeared. It was my day, the day I would marry the man I had loved for 6 years. Around noon we left for the hotel. The car ride was silent, I was too excited to talk. I watched the Chicago skyline pass by outside the window and thought about how beautiful the ceremony would be, how romantic the first dance would be, how happy David and I would be. If only I had known that in a few hours my world would collapse. When we arrived at the hotel, everything was perfect. The flowers had been arranged exactly as I had requested, the tables were set impeccably, the location was a dream. The guests were starting to arrive, all elegant and excited. I also saw David's friends arrive, including Tyler. He was handsome in his dark gray suit, hair perfectly styled, a dazzling smile. When he saw me he waved, but there was something strange in his look. Something I couldn't decipher. Nervousness? Guilt? Excitement? I didn't know, but it gave me chills. The ceremony, the last moment of happiness. The ceremony took place in the hotel's ballroom, beautifully decorated with white roses and blue hydrangeas. When I entered, accompanied by my father, and saw David at the altar, my heart skipped a beat. He was beautiful. The dark blue tuxedo we had chosen together fit him perfectly, his hair was styled but not too much, and when he looked up and saw me, his smile lit up the entire room. In that moment, all doubts disappeared. It was my David, the man I loved, and he was about to become my husband. The ceremony was perfect. The officiant celebrated with warmth and participation, The readings were touching. The music was what we had chosen together. When it came time for the vows, David took my hands and looked straight into my eyes. "Jessica," he began, and his voice was trembling slightly. "You are the most important woman in my life. You have made me a better man. You have taught me what it means to truly love. I promise to love, respect, and protect you for all the days of my life." They were the most beautiful words he had ever said to me. And he seemed sincere, completely present in that moment. My vows were equally emotional. I had written and rewritten those words dozens of times. I wanted them to be perfect. "David, you are my best friend, my adventure companion, the man of my dreams. I promise to stand by you in joy and sorrow, to support your dreams and to build a life full of love together with you." When the officiant said the words, "You may exchange rings," I felt emotion rising in my throat. David slipped the wedding band on my finger with infinite sweetness, and when I did the same to him, his eyes were teary. "You may kiss," said the officiant. The kiss was magical. Long, passionate, full of love. All the guests applauded, someone cried with joy, and I felt like the happiest woman in the world. I was married. Finally married to the man of my life. Coming out of the ceremony, under a shower of rice and rose petals, David whispered in my ear, "I love you, Mrs. Thompson." I had decided to take his last name. "I love you too, my husband." They were the last sincere words we exchanged. The reception, everything seemed perfect. The reception began with cocktails in the hotel's garden terrace. Everything was perfectly organized. Liveried waiters serving champagne and gourmet appetizers, live jazz music, elegant guests mingling in a festive atmosphere. David and I were the center of attention, as was right. Everyone wanted to congratulate us, wish us well, take photos with us. We were radiant, smiling, in love. Or at least, that's how we seemed. But I started noticing strange details. David was smiling and cordial with everyone, but every now and then his gaze would get lost in the crowd, as if he were looking for someone. And when he found Tyler, his eyes would light up in a particular way. Tyler, for his part, was the perfect best man. Cordial with everyone, attentive that everything went smoothly, always ready to solve any small problem. But he too had this way of looking at David that made me uncomfortable. They were looks too intense to be just friendship. During cocktails, Tyler approached us with 2 champagne glasses. "To the bride and groom," he said, raising his glass. "Thanks, Tyler," I replied. "You're doing a fantastic job as best man." "It's the least I can do for David," he replied, looking directly at my new husband. "He's a special person. Very special." The way he had said it, the intensity of his gaze, had given me chills. Dinner was perfect. The menu we had chosen was delicious, the service impeccable, the atmosphere magical. We were seated at the head table, with our families and closest friends. David seemed relaxed and happy, chatting with everyone, laughing at jokes, holding my hand. But every now and then I saw him checking his watch. "Everything okay, honey?" I asked him during the second course. Yes, perfect. I'm just thinking about the first dance. I can't wait." The first dance. We had practiced that choreography dozens of times. It was one of the moments I was most looking forward to. Perfect by Ed Sheeran, our song, the most romantic moment of the evening. If only I had known it would become the most terrible moment of my life. During dinner I noticed that David and Tyler kept exchanging glances. It wasn't anything dramatic, nothing that other guests could notice, but I knew them both well enough to perceive that there was something strange. Tyler seemed nervous, kept playing with his napkin, drinking more wine than usual. And every time he caught David's eye, there was this tension in the air, as if they were communicating something I couldn't understand. Around 9 o'clock, the DJ started preparing the music for the first dance. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. The bride and groom's first dance." All the guests applauded and started gathering around the dance floor. David stood up, extended his hand to me with a smile, and we went to the center of the room. The lights dimmed, the spotlights turned on us, and the first notes of Perfect began to fill the air. I found a love for me. David took me in his arms, I rested my head on his shoulder, and we started moving slowly. All the guests watched us smiling, some with phones ready to film the moment. It was magical. It was perfect. It was everything I had always dreamed of. And then suddenly everything changed. The moment everything changed. We had been dancing for about a minute when I felt David stiffen in my arms. His body, which until that moment had been moving fluidly with the music, suddenly became tense. I lifted my head from his shoulder to look at him. His eyes weren't on me, as they should be during the first wedding dance. He was looking over my shoulder, toward something or someone among the guests. "David," I whispered. "What's wrong?" He lowered his gaze to me, but his eyes seemed distant, worried. "Nothing, nothing," he murmured, but his voice was tense. We continued dancing, but I felt something was wrong. David had stopped singing softly along with the words of the song, as he had been doing until that moment. His movements had become mechanical, as if his mind was elsewhere. And then, in the middle of the song, he stopped. "Jessica, I'm sorry, I need to go to the bathroom for a moment." "What? Now? During our first dance?" "It's an emergency, honey. I drank too much champagne, I can't hold it anymore." I looked at him incredulously. It was our first dance, the most romantic moment of the wedding, and he wanted to interrupt it to go to the bathroom? "David, can't it wait? There are only 2 minutes left in the song." "No, Jessica, I really can't. I'll be right back, I promise." And without waiting for my response, he pulled away from me. David headed toward the DJ, said something to him, and the music stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was deafening. All the guests looked at us confused, murmuring among themselves. "Sorry," I stammered, addressing the guests. "David will be right back, we'll resume in a moment." But inside I knew something was very wrong. David headed quickly toward the exit of the ballroom, without even looking at me. I saw him disappear behind the door, and at that moment I noticed another absence. Tyler was no longer among the guests surrounding the dance floor. At first I didn't pay attention to it. I thought he had also gone to the bathroom, or that he was smoking outside, or that he was solving some organizational problem. But after 5 minutes, neither David nor Tyler had returned. The guests had resumed chatting, the DJ had put on background music, but the atmosphere had become strange. Everyone was wondering where the groom had gone, why he had interrupted the first dance, when he would return. "Everything okay, Jessica?" asked Madison, my maid of honor, approaching with a worried expression. Yes, David just needed to go to the bathroom. He'll be right back." But 15 minutes had already passed, and inside me a terrible anxiety was growing. The desperate search. After 15 minutes of absence, I couldn't stand still anymore. I had to find David, understand what was happening, why he was embarrassing both of us in front of all our guests. "Madison, can you tell the guests we'll resume the first dance shortly? I'm going to look for David. Do you want me to come with you?" No thanks. I'll be faster alone. I started my search from the men's bathroom closest to the ballroom. I knocked on the door. David? Are you there? No answer. I asked a waiter to check for me. It was empty. I checked the bathroom upstairs. Empty too. I went out to the garden, thinking maybe David had needed some fresh air. I checked among the trees, near the fountain, in the gazebo. Nothing. I went to the parking lot, thinking maybe he had felt sick and gone to the car. I checked our car, his parents' car, Tyler's car. All empty. Meanwhile, anxiety was becoming panic. Where the hell had my husband gone? And why had Tyler disappeared too? I started asking the guests if they had seen David. He was here a moment ago, his cousin told me. I saw him heading toward the bathrooms, said a colleague. Maybe he went out to smoke, suggested another. But no one had seen him in the last 20 minutes. I went back inside the hotel, more and more agitated. I checked all the rooms, the kitchen, even the basement. Nothing. It was as if David had vanished into thin air. And Tyler? He had also completely disappeared. When I returned to the main ballroom, my mother approached with a worried expression. Jessica, honey, where are David and Tyler? The guests are starting to ask. I don't know, Mom. I'm looking for them everywhere, but I can't find them. Maybe they're together somewhere, solving some problem. Together. They were together. And suddenly, all the suspicions, all the doubts, all the strangeness of the last weeks came back to the surface like a devastating wave. I continued searching, but now with a different awareness. I was no longer looking for my husband who had had an emergency. I was looking for my husband who had disappeared with his best friend, and inside me a terrible certainty was growing about what I would find. And then I heard voices. Voices coming from the bathroom on the ground floor, the one no one ever used because it was hidden behind the kitchen, far from the main ballroom. Male voices, whispered, agitated. My heart started beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I approached that door, and what I saw destroyed my life in a second. The discovery that changed everything. The bathroom door was ajar. Through the crack, I saw what I never would have wanted to see, what I never would have imagined even in my worst nightmares. David was there. My David, my husband of just a few hours, was there with Tyler. But they weren't talking. They weren't solving organizational problems. They were kissing. Not a friendly kiss, not a congratulatory or encouraging kiss. A passionate, desperate kiss, full of desire and love. David's hands were buried in Tyler's hair, Tyler's were gripping David's back, over the tuxedo jacket I had chosen for him. It was a kiss between two people in love. Madly in love. I stood paralyzed. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. It couldn't be true. It couldn't be my David, the man who had just promised me eternal love in front of God and 150 guests. But it was him. It was really him. And it wasn't just a kiss. As I watched, shocked and unable to move, I heard David whisper, "I love you, Tyler. I've always loved you." "I love you too," Tyler replied. "I can't pretend anymore." "After tonight, everything will change," David said. "After tonight we can." And at that moment I took a step back, involuntarily. My heel creaked on the marble floor. David and Tyler separated abruptly, their terrified eyes meeting mine. The silence that followed was deafening. None of us three could say a word. David turned white as a sheet. "Jessica. We." Tyler looked like he was about to faint. Jessica, it's not what it seems. But I couldn't say a single word. All the pieces of the puzzle fell into place in an instant. The complicit looks, the mysterious phone calls, the bachelor party in Vegas, David's physical distance in recent weeks, his nervousness, the intensity of his relationship with Tyler. Everything made sense. Terribly, devastatingly sense. My husband was gay. He was in love with his best friend. And he had married me as a cover, as a way to hide his true identity. I ran. The collapse of a world. I ran out of that bathroom like I had the devil on my heels. The wedding dress hindered me, the veil got caught everywhere, but I didn't care. I just had to get away from there, from that devastating truth, from that reality that had just destroyed my life. Tears completely blinded me. I couldn't see where I was going, I stumbled, but I kept running. I arrived in the ballroom where the party continued, unaware of the drama that had just unfolded. The guests were laughing, chatting, dancing. Everything seemed so surreal, so absurdly normal while my world was collapsing. Madison saw me arrive and rushed toward me. Jessica. My God, what happened? You're white as a ghost and you're crying. I found him, I whispered in a voice I didn't recognize as mine. I found David. So? Where was he? Why are you crying? I couldn't answer. How do you tell your best friend, in the middle of your wedding, in front of 150 guests, that you just discovered your husband is gay and cheated on you with his best man? How do you say your life just ended? David arrived in the ballroom a few minutes after me. His face was red, his hair disheveled, his tie crooked, his eyes terrified. When he saw me, he stopped dead, as if he had hit an invisible wall. Our eyes met across the room, and in that moment I saw everything: guilt, fear, desperation, but also a kind of relief. As if, after years of lies, he was finally free to be himself. Tyler appeared shortly after, pale and trembling. David approached me slowly, as if he were approaching a wounded animal that might run away at any moment. Jessica, he whispered. Can we talk? In private. There's nothing to talk about, I replied, surprisingly calm. I saw everything I needed to see. Jessica, please, let me explain. Explain what, David? Explain that you lied to me for 6 years? Explain that you married me knowing you loved someone else? Explain that I was your perfect cover. My voice was rising. Some guests had started turning toward us. Jessica, not here, please. Let's go somewhere we can talk. I looked around the ballroom. All those guests who had come to celebrate our love. All those gifts, all those flowers, all that joy that had been built on a lie. Okay, I said. Let's talk. The most painful confession. David took me to a secluded room, away from the ballroom and the guests. His hands were shaking as he closed the door behind us. Jessica, How long? I interrupted him. How long have you loved Tyler? David lowered his gaze, unable to look me in the eyes. Always, he whispered. Since we were kids. Always. Those 2 words hit me like a slap. And with me? What was I to you all these years? Jessica, you're important to me. I care about you, I respect you, But you don't love me. The silence that followed confirmed everything. Why? I asked, and my voice broke. Why did you do this to me? Why did you marry me knowing you loved someone else? David started crying. Because I was scared. Because my family, society, everyone expected me to marry a woman. Because I thought that with you I could be happy, that I could forget Tyler. Forget Tyler. But you never managed to, did you? No, he admitted. I never managed to. And in Vegas. What happened in Vegas? David hesitated, then started telling me. Tyler told me he loved me. That he couldn't pretend to be just my best friend anymore. And I confessed that I loved him too. We spent 4 days together alone, without having to pretend. They were the happiest days of my life. Every word was like a knife to the heart. And then you came back and decided to marry me anyway. I thought I could resist. I thought that by marrying you I would do the right thing, that over time I would forget Tyler. But it didn't go that way. No. Every day was torture. Every night I spent with you, I thought about him. Every time I kissed you, touched you, told you I love you, it was a lie. And tonight, when we started dancing, when everyone looked at us as the perfect couple, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see him, I had to tell him that. What? That after tonight I would have found the courage to tell you the truth. That I would have asked for a divorce. That I would finally live my real life. I started laughing. A bitter, desperate, hysterical laugh. After tonight, you would have waited for the reception to end, for all the guests to leave, for us to consummate the marriage, and then you would have told me it was all fake. Jessica, You're a coward, David. A coward and a liar. I know, he admitted, continuing to cry. I know, and I'm sorrier than you can imagine. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt me? You destroyed me, David. You stole 6 years of my life. You made me believe I was loved when instead I was just a cover. That's not true. I do care about you, Jessica. I never used you, it's not like that. Then what is it? Explain it to me, because I don't understand. David sat down, covered his face with his hands, and started talking in a voice broken by tears. The complete truth. I grew up in a traditional family, David began. My father is a successful engineer, my mother a respected teacher. My brother got married young, had 2 children, he's what everyone considers the perfect example of a successful son. And I always knew I was different. I listened in silence, still shocked but curious to understand. Already in elementary school I knew that boys interested me more than girls. But growing up in a Catholic conservative family, I couldn't even think of being gay. It was inconceivable. And Tyler. I've known Tyler since we were 8 years old. He's always been my best friend, but even as children there was something special between us. We played together, slept at each other's houses, we were inseparable. And growing up, what I felt for him became more and more intense. But you never told him. How could I? In the 90s, in a small town like ours, being gay was still an absolute taboo. Our parents were friends, we attended the same parish, went to the same school. If I had confessed my feelings, I would have destroyed everything. And Tyler? Did he also feel something for you? I didn't know. I thought I was the only one feeling that tension. Tyler had always been successful with girls, at least apparently. I thought he was straight and that I was just a special friend to him. David paused, wiped his eyes, and continued. In college I started dating some girls, to try to be normal. But it never worked. I couldn't feel what I was supposed to feel. And then I met you. And with me it was different. Yes and no. You were special, Jessica. You're intelligent, beautiful, sweet, everything a man should want in a woman. And I really cared about you. It wasn't all fake. But it wasn't love. It was a different kind of love. I loved you like you love a sister, a best friend. I thought that was enough to build a life together. I thought passion was overrated, that what mattered was compatibility, affection, mutual respect. And meanwhile you continued seeing Tyler. Tyler was my best friend. I couldn't cut him out of my life. And he never did anything to make me understand he felt something for me. At least until Vegas. What exactly happened in Vegas? David closed his eyes, as if reliving those days was painful. The second day we were on the beach, just him and me. The others had gone on a boat trip. We were talking about the wedding, about how everything would change afterward. And Tyler became strange, silent. Finally he looked at me and said, "David, I have to tell you something before it's too late." And he confessed he loved you. He told me he had been in love with me forever. That he had hoped for years that I would understand, that I would make the first move. That he had dated all those girls to try to forget me, but he had never succeeded. And that he couldn't stand the idea of seeing me marry another person. And what did you do? At first I was shocked. Then I kissed him. And in that moment I understood what I had been looking for my whole life. What I had never felt with any woman, not even with you. His words were like stabs to the heart. We spent the rest of the weekend together. For the first time in my life I felt complete, authentic, happy. But when we returned to Chicago, reality hit me. The wedding was in 3 weeks, everything was organized, everyone expected. And you decided to marry me anyway. I thought it was the right thing to do. That I should honor the commitment I had made to you, to our families. I thought that over time I would forget what I had felt in Vegas. But it didn't go that way. No. Every day was harder than the previous one. Pretending with you, pretending with our parents, pretending with myself. And Tyler suffered as much as I did. We talked every day, we saw each other secretly, but we couldn't really be together. And tonight, when we were dancing, when everyone looked at us as the perfect couple, I realized I couldn't continue anymore. It wasn't fair to you or to me. I had to tell you the truth. After consummating the marriage, though. David turned red. No, Jessica. We would never have. What? Nothing would have happened between us tonight. I would have found an excuse, I would have slept on the couch. I couldn't have touched you knowing I loved someone else. And there I understood the full extent of the humiliation I was suffering. Not only had he married me without loving me, not only had he lied to me for 6 years, but on our wedding night, the night that should have been the most special of our life together, he wouldn't have even pretended to desire me. I was completely, totally, definitively rejected. The most difficult decision. I remained silent for what seemed like an eternity. Outside the room I could hear the reception music, the laughter of guests who didn't know that the marriage they were celebrating had just ended before it even began. David looked at me with tear-filled eyes, waiting for my reaction, my word, anything. "Tell me one thing, David," I said finally. "In these 6 years, was there ever a moment when you truly loved me? A moment when you weren't pretending?" David thought for a long time before answering. "Yes," he said finally. "When I proposed to you in Big Sur. In that moment, seeing you happy, seeing how much it meant to you, I really thought we could be happy together. I thought love could grow over time, that passion was less important than compatibility. But it didn't go that way. No. Coming back from Big Sur, seeing Tyler again, I realized I was just fooling myself. And you? I nodded. At least he had been honest. And now? What do you want to do now? I don't know, Jessica. It's in your hands. We can try to make the marriage work. I can try to forget Tyler, I can. No. I interrupted him firmly. No, David. It would never work. And above all, it's not fair. What do you mean? I mean you deserve to be happy. You deserve to love and be loved for who you really are. And Tyler deserves the same. David looked at me surprised. Jessica. And I deserve more than this. I stood up, adjusted my wedding dress for what I knew would be the last time, and looked him straight in the eyes. I deserve a man who truly loves me, who desires me, who can't live without me, who is happy to wake up every morning next to me. I deserve authentic love, not a pitiful lie. Jessica, I'm sorry. I know you're sorry, David. And in a way, I forgive you too. I understand you were scared, that you tried to do what you thought was right. But that doesn't change the fact that it's over. What will you do? What I have to do. I'll tell the guests the truth. I'll annul the marriage. And you can finally be yourself. David started crying harder. Jessica, you can't. Not in front of everyone. Your family, my family. David, it's already happened. The marriage is already over. The only difference is whether we want to continue lying or if we want to start telling the truth. What if the guests react badly? What if our parents don't understand? Then we'll find out who are the people who deserve to be in our lives. You can't live in lies anymore, David. And I can't be an accomplice to this lie anymore. I opened the door to the room. Come on. It's time to tell the truth. The most difficult announcement of my life. Going back to the ballroom was one of the hardest things I've ever done. All the guests were there, smiling, happy, waiting for the bride and groom to return to continue the party. My mother saw me and immediately approached. Jessica, honey, everything okay? Where were you? Mom, I need to make an announcement to all the guests. What kind of announcement? Call everyone, please. I need to say something important. My mother looked at me worried, but did what I asked. She called everyone's attention, asked the DJ to lower the music. Within a few minutes, all 150 guests were gathered around me. Madison brought me the microphone, looking at me with a terrified expression. Jessica, what are you doing? What I have to do, I replied. I took the microphone with trembling hands. Sorry for the interruption, I began, and my voice echoed throughout the ballroom. I know you're wondering why we interrupted the first dance, why we disappeared for so long. The silence was absolute. Everyone looked at me attentively. I have to inform you that the party ends here. The marriage is annulled. The silence that followed was surreal. Then the murmurs began, the exclamations of surprise, the general confusion. Jessica, what are you saying? My mother shouted, her face shocked. I'm telling the truth, Mom. David and I are no longer married. The marriage is over. But why? What happened? Asked my father, approaching with an incredulous expression. I looked at David, who was pale as a ghost but nodding slightly, as if giving me permission to continue. What happened is that we realized we're not made for each other. That our marriage would have been a mistake. But you love each other. shouted David's mother. You've known each other for 6 years. Knowing each other doesn't always mean loving each other the right way, I replied. Sometimes love isn't enough. I couldn't tell the whole truth. It wasn't my secret to reveal. David had to find the courage to do it himself, when he felt ready. The guests were shocked, confused, some angry. But all the money spent, said someone. The gifts, said someone else. Couldn't you think about it before? Shouted one of David's aunts. I'm sorry, I said into the microphone. Sorry for the trouble, for the inconvenience, for the disappointment. I know it's a difficult situation to understand. But sometimes in life you have to have the courage to stop before it's too late. Jessica, think again. My grandmother shouted. Marriages always go through difficult moments. Grandma, it's not a difficult moment. It's the end. I looked one last time at all those guests, all those shocked faces, and added, I only ask you to respect our decision. And to go home in peace. Thank you for being here with us, even if things didn't go as we hoped. I turned off the microphone and returned it to the DJ. The chaos that followed was indescribable. Everyone was talking at once, asking questions, expressing opinions. Some guests started leaving immediately, others approached to try to understand better, others remained watching as if we were animals in a zoo. But I couldn't hear anything anymore. It was as if I were in a bubble of silence, separated from the rest of the world. David approached me. Jessica, thank you, he whispered. Thank you for having the courage I didn't have. Now it's your turn, David. Now you have to find the courage to be yourself. The immediate consequences. What happened in the hours following the announcement was a whirlwind of emotions, explanations, tears, and confusion. Our parents were devastated. My mother was crying, my father was furious, David's parents were in shock. Everyone wanted more detailed explanations, everyone tried to convince us to reconsider, not to make hasty decisions. It's wedding stress, David's mother said. It's normal to have doubts, but you overcome them. They're not doubts, I kept repeating. It's a certainty. Madison was incredible. She didn't ask questions, she didn't judge. She just stayed close to me and helped me with practical matters. Changing clothes, gathering my things, managing vendors who needed to be informed of the situation. Tyler had disappeared. After my confession in the bathroom, he had literally vanished. No one knew where he was, not even David. He's scared, David explained to me. He's afraid of the consequences, of what people will say. And you? Aren't you afraid? I'm terrified. But I'm also relieved. For the first time in my life, someone knows the truth about who I really am. The guests left gradually. Some with understanding and affection, others with disapproval and judgment. It was humiliating to see their reactions, hear their comments, imagine what they would say in the following days. But at the same time, I felt free. Free from the lie, free from the act, free from the relationship that was slowly destroying me without my realizing it. Around midnight, the Blackstone Hotel was empty. David and I were left alone in the ballroom that a few hours earlier had been full of celebration and joy. The tables were still set, the flowers were still fresh, the wedding cake was still intact at the center of the head table. It's surreal, I said, looking around. Jessica, what will you do now? I'll go back to my parents' house tonight. Tomorrow I'll start settling practical matters. The apartment, things, documents. And us? Will we keep in touch? I thought before answering. Not immediately, David. I need time to process all this. To understand who I am without you, after 6 years. I understand. But someday when we've both healed, maybe we can be friends. Real friends without lies. David nodded, with tears in his eyes. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for giving me the chance to be myself. Now go to Tyler, I said. Go live your real life. The days after pain and rebirth. The days following were the most difficult of my life. Going back to my parents' house in my wedding dress, explaining to relatives and friends what had happened, facing their reactions, some understanding, others judgmental. The pain was indescribable. It wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the end of 6 years of life, of projects, of shared dreams. It was discovering I had been deceived all this time, of having loved someone who didn't really exist. But there was also anger. Anger for the wasted time, for the lies, for the public humiliation. Anger for being used as a cover, as a way to hide the truth. And there was shame. Shame for not having seen the signs, for being so naive, for believing such a big lie for so long. In the first days I couldn't even leave the house. The idea of meeting someone who had been at the wedding, of having to answer questions, of seeing pity or judgment in people's eyes, paralyzed me. Madison was my salvation. She came to see me every day, brought me food, forced me to shower, to get dressed, to leave the house even just for a walk. I know it seems impossible now, she told me, but you'll recover. You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong. I feel destroyed. It's normal. You've suffered enormous trauma. But the fact that you had the courage to stop everything, to tell the truth in front of 150 people, shows how strong you are. After a week, I started the procedures for annulling the marriage. In the US, after such a short time and without consummation, it was possible to get an annulment rather than a divorce. It was painful but necessary. I had to tell the story to a lawyer, then to a judge. Each time it was like reliving that terrible moment in the bathroom, that devastating discovery. David, for his part, had confessed everything to his parents. The reaction had been difficult, but over time, they had started to accept the situation. We prefer a gay and happy son to a straight and unhappy son, his mother had finally said. Tyler had returned to New York, where he worked. He and David talked every day, but they didn't yet have the courage to live their relationship openly. Therapy and personal growth. After a month of depression and isolation, I realized I needed professional help. I started therapy with a psychologist specialized in relational trauma. The first sessions were devastating. I had to go through the entire relationship with David, analyze every moment, every sign I had ignored. It was like reopening a wound each time. Jessica, the doctor told me during one of the first sessions, you have no fault in this story. You were the victim of deception, not an accomplice to a lie. But how could I not notice? How could I be so blind? Because you were in love. And when we're in love, we tend to see what we want to see, to justify strange behaviors, to believe the explanations we're given. Moreover, David was very good at hiding the truth. I feel stupid. You're not stupid. You're human. And you did what all people in love do, you trusted the person you loved. Gradually, I started to understand that I wasn't the problem. I wasn't the wrong one, the one who wasn't enough, the one who had failed to keep her man. I had simply ended up in the wrong story. Therapy also helped me process the anger. For months I was angry with David, with Tyler, with myself. But over time I understood that anger was only hurting me. Anger is normal and necessary, the doctor explained to me. But it can't become your prison. You have to go through it to get to the other side. And on the other side there was forgiveness. Not immediately, not easily, but gradually. Forgiveness and reconciliation. 6 months after the end of the marriage, David wrote me a letter. A long, honest, painful letter in which he explained everything he hadn't had the courage to tell me that evening at the hotel. He told me about his inner struggle, his fear of disappointing the family, his hope that by marrying me he could heal from his homosexuality. He apologized for involving me in his personal battle, for hurting me, for not having the courage to be honest from the beginning. And he thanked me. He thanked me for giving him the strength to be himself, for stopping a lie that would have destroyed us both. Now I live with Tyler, he wrote. We're happy together, but every day I think about you and the pain I caused you. I hope that someday you can forgive me. I cried reading that letter. But they weren't tears of anger or pain. They were tears of understanding, compassion, forgiveness. It took me a few more months before I found the courage to reply to him. But when I did, I wrote that I forgave him. That I understood his struggle, that I didn't wish him ill, that I hoped he was happy. You deserve to be happy too, Jessica, he replied. You deserve true, authentic, total love. And I'm sure you'll find it. After a year, we met again. A quick coffee, in a downtown Chicago cafe. It was strange seeing him after so long, but also liberating. David seemed different. More relaxed, more authentic, more himself. He told me about his life with Tyler, their project to open an architecture studio together, their family's reactions. How did your parents take it? I asked. At first very badly. My mother cried for weeks, my father wouldn't talk to me anymore. But over time they understood. Now Tyler comes to dinner at their house every Sunday. I'm happy for you both. And you? How are you? I'm well. I'm learning to be myself again. And it was true. I really was well. Rebirth, finding myself again. The first year after the end of the marriage was mainly dedicated to rebuilding myself. To understanding who I was without David, what I wanted from life, what my dreams and aspirations were. I traveled a lot. All those trips that David and I had always postponed, when we have more time, or when we have more money, I took them alone. I went to Thailand, Peru, Japan. I discovered the pleasure of traveling without compromises, of choosing what to see, where to go, what to eat, without having to mediate with anyone. I resumed cultivating friendships I had somewhat neglected during the years with David. I rediscovered the pleasure of girls' nights out, late-night chats, confidences and laughter. I changed jobs. From the clinical psychology center where I was interning, I moved to a counseling center that dealt with violence against women and relationship problems. My personal experience, however painful, had given me particular sensitivity to certain situations. I also started volunteering at an organization that helped LGBTQ+ people in difficulty. Paradoxically, my story with David had made me more aware of the struggles faced by people who can't live their sexual identity openly. And I started dating other men. Not immediately, and not without difficulty. The first dates were disastrous. I was too suspicious, too attentive to details, too ready to see signs of deception everywhere. You're afraid to trust again, the psychologist explained to me. It's normal after what you went through. But you can't let fear prevent you from living. Gradually, I learned to trust again. Not blindly as I had done with David, but consciously and gradually. New love, Ryan. 2 years after the end of the marriage, I met Ryan. I met him during a photography course I had decided to take to cultivate a passion I had always postponed. Ryan was different from David in everything: shorter, dark hair, brown eyes, extroverted and sunny character. But above all, he was authentic in a way I immediately recognized. He never tried to impress me or seem different from who he was. The first day of class he showed up in ripped jeans and a coffee-stained t-shirt. "Sorry for the look," he said laughing, "but this morning I had an accident with the coffee maker." I immediately liked this natural way of being, without masks. We started seeing each other slowly. First as classmates, then as friends, finally as something more. Ryan wasn't in a hurry, and this reassured me. He didn't pressure me, didn't ask indiscreet questions about my past, gave me my time. When I told him the story of my failed marriage, his reaction was perfect. "It must have been terrible," he said simply. "But I'm glad you had the courage to stop everything. It means you're a person with integrity, who doesn't accept compromises on your happiness." He didn't judge David, didn't make nasty comments, didn't try to be my savior. He simply listened, understood, and accepted. With Ryan I rediscovered what it means to be truly desired. Not just loved or respected, but desired physically, emotionally, mentally. His eyes light up when he sees me, he looks for me with his gaze when we're among other people, he can't help but touch me when we're together. It's what it should have been with David, but never was. Lessons learned. Today, 3 years after that cursed June 15th, I can say I've learned fundamental lessons about life, love, and myself. First lesson: trust your instinct. If something seems strange in your relationship, if you have doubts, if you feel something doesn't add up, don't ignore it. Our instinct often perceives things our rational mind doesn't want to accept. Second lesson: true love doesn't need justifications. If you often find yourself justifying your partner's behavior, finding excuses for their shortcomings, convincing yourself that they're made that way, maybe they're not the right person for you. Third lesson: never settle. You deserve total, authentic, passionate love. Don't settle for lukewarm love, for a comfortable but fireless relationship. Life is too short to waste it in relationships that don't make you feel special. Fourth lesson: forgiveness frees yourself first. Forgiving David didn't mean justifying what he did to me, but freeing myself from the weight of anger and resentment. Fifth lesson: sometimes the biggest crises lead to the most beautiful rebirths. That failed marriage, however painful, taught me who I really am and what I want from life. David and Tyler today. David and Tyler live together in New York. They opened their architecture studio, as they had always dreamed, and mainly deal with sustainable building projects. They're happy. I see it from the photos David shares on social media, from the few times we talk. They found the courage to be themselves, to live their love openly, to face society's judgments. Their parents accepted the situation. It wasn't easy, especially for David's family, which is more traditionalist, but love for their children won over prejudices. Tyler wrote to me a year ago to apologize. A brief but sincere letter, in which he explained his point of view, his guilt, his gratitude for having freed him too from the lie. "I know I can't ask you to forgive me," he wrote. "But I want you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I had loved David for so long that when I finally found the courage to tell him, I didn't think about the consequences for you. I was selfish, and I'm sorry." I replied that I forgave him. Because he too was a victim of a society that doesn't easily accept diversity, that pushes people to hide, to lie, to live lives that don't belong to them. The message I want to leave: Girls, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this long and painful story, it's this: never be afraid to say enough. It doesn't matter how much time you've invested in a relationship, how many projects you've made together, how many people you'll have to disappoint. If you feel something is wrong, if your heart tells you it's not right, if your instinct sends you alarm signals, listen to it. It's better to stop before it's too late, rather than waste years of your life in a lie. It's better to face the pain of truth than to live in the falsity of a relationship that doesn't belong to you. You deserve to be loved for who you really are. You deserve someone who chooses you every day, who desires you, who can't imagine their life without you. Never settle for less. Never convince yourself that it's better than nothing. Never be afraid to be alone rather than be with the wrong person. Loneliness is temporary. A wrong relationship can last a lifetime. And if you find yourself in a situation similar to mine, if you discover that the person you love lied to you about their identity, remember that it's not your fault. You're not the wrong ones, the ones who aren't enough, the ones who failed. You simply ended up in the wrong story. My life today. Today I'm 31 years old. I live in my own apartment, have a job I love, true friends, a family that supports me, and Ryan, the man who makes me feel loved the right way. I'm not getting married yet. I need more time to completely trust the institution of marriage again. But Ryan understands, he's patient, and this makes me love the person he is even more. Sometimes I think about how my life would have been if I hadn't had the courage to stop everything that evening. If I had continued pretending, living in the lie, wasting the best years of my life in a fake relationship. And I thank myself for having that courage. I thank the Jessica of 3 years ago who, despite the pain, despite the humiliation, despite the fear, found the strength to say enough. That decision saved my life. It allowed me to discover who I really am, what I want, how I deserve to be loved. It gave me the chance to meet Ryan, to build an authentic life, to be truly happy. June 15, 2021 was the most terrible day of my life. But it was also the day that changed me forever, for the better. Conclusion: a message of hope. Girls, I know this story has been long, intense, sometimes difficult to listen to. I know some of you recognized yourselves in what I told, that you relived your pain, your disappointments, your fears. But I want you to know that you can be reborn. You can rebuild. You can love again and be loved again. The pain you feel today won't last forever. The anger you feel now doesn't define you. The disappointment that's destroying your heart isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where you'll be stronger, more aware, more selective. A chapter where you won't accept compromises on your happiness anymore. Trust yourselves. Listen to yourselves. Respect yourselves. And always remember that you deserve all the love in the world. The real kind, the authentic kind, the kind that makes you feel complete. Never settle for less. If this video touched you, if it made you think, if it helped you in some way, please like and subscribe to the channel. Share your story in the comments. Sometimes just knowing we're not alone is enough to start healing. And if you know someone who needs to hear these words, share this video. Together, we can help each other recognize our worth. I'll see you in the next video, girls. And remember, you're stronger than you think. You're more beautiful than you believe. And you deserve more love than you imagine. Never let anyone convince you otherwise.